do an example here. So the amount of fuel used in a car is almost proportional to the distance that the car is driven. This is called fuel mileage. Now, for those of you that are car buffs, or you might enjoy vehicles, or you might have heard a little bit about this, you might have heard of fuel mileage as miles per gallon, or liters per 100 kilometers, or liters per kilometer. That's all something that, kilometers per liter would be a different one. Okay, those are all kind of ways that we can calculate how much fuel a vehicle uses, and again, we can figure out which one uses less fuel or which one uses more fuel based on that. Now, Ella kept track of the amount of fuel that was left in her vehicle based on the number of kilometers she had driven, and we're going to graph this data out. So here we have a chart which has kilometers driven, which is going to be our X value, and fuel left, which is going to be our Y value. Okay, so our coordinate points are going to be 0, 50, 113, 41, 188, 35, 350, 22, 438, 15. So these are our coordinate points. Now you'll notice, different from the previous example that we did with hourly wage, these are not evenly spaced. So we're going to get a bunch of points that are kind of unevenly spaced inside of our graph. So I'm going to entitle this graph fuel mileage. And on the bottom right here, this is a little bit tight. This is going to be kilometers driven. And over here, and I'm going to just twist it over here, is going to be fuel left. Now, when you draw out a graph like this, try to make sure to fill up as much as possible. If it was to be on, say, a quiz or a test, we would try to fill up this thing as much as possible, not just use this little corner, because the more we can use, the more accurate that graph is going to be. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I got 14 right there. Fuel left, I want to go up to 50. So the best way that I can figure this one out is I'm going to go up by fives, I guess, would be. I always skip one of the numbers. So you'll notice I don't put the 5, the 15, the 25, or the 35 in there, as I'm trying to make it, well, a little bit neater. Instead of writing in a ton of numbers, we can recognize what's in between there. On this side here, kilometers driven, I have to go up to 438. Now, the easiest way is probably going to be go up by 50s. So 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, and this is going to be 600 right there, and 700. It's a little tight. All right. Apparently, I got to make my notes a little bit better. So when we graph this out here, and I'm going to grab a different color, we're going to graph all these points. So at 0 kilometers driven, which is right here, there was 50 liters of fuel in the tank. So that's that point right there. Then at 113, now we're going to have to kind of try to estimate where 113 is. So it's just above 100. That's 150, so a little bit above here. It's going to be at 41, so we're going to say that's right there. Now again, accuracy will be a challenge, but again, we're going to try to make it as best as possible. 188 is a little before 200, and we are at 35, so that one should be fairly straightforward on the Y at least, right there. And then we have 350, well, that's a nice point right there, and 22, so it's going to be right, let's see, 22 is right there, that's 25, and that's 20. And then 438, which is right there, is going to be at 15, ooh, another nice number. It's always nice when you get those ones that are at least on one of the lines, on one of the graphs there, right? So there is our, that's our graph right there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to draw a line through there. And as I seem to have misplaced my ruler, oh no, I found it. Okay, that's good. I was almost going to have to use something different. All right, so what we do is we draw a line of best fit through these points. If we can get through all of them, which it looks like we can, oh, look at that, that's perfect. We're going to draw that line just like that. All right, so this line here represents the amount of fuel that is left in her vehicle after a certain amount of kilometers driven. Now, it should make sense that it's going down. Okay, so we start with lots, and we're going to end up with little or none at the end if we were to run it completely dry. Now, should we connect these points? Yes. We can do any single number of kilometers driven, and there will be any amount of fuel left in there. Okay, we can go down to, microscopic kilometer and determine the microscopic fuel left. Well, it'd be kind of pointless, but we could do that. Okay, every single kilometer is broken into, meters and centimeters and millimeters, and we could figure out the distance driven to the millimeter, or even less, and that would give her, we would be able to find an answer. So every single one of those values is going to be in there. Now let's answer a couple questions. Let's see if we can figure a few things out here. First off, how many liters of fuel did Ella start with in her car? Well, that is at the 0 mark because she hasn't driven anything, and so she had 50 liters of fuel at the start. Okay, she had 50 liters of fuel at the start. Okay, so that's what we can kind of read from the chart, from either the chart or our graph right here. Now, if Ella runs out of, or drives until she runs out of gas, how many kilometers would that be? Well, in this case here, we need to kind of extrapolate this graph when we've drawn this line right to where the fuel ends up at 0, which is right there. Now, if you were to draw out your own graph, it could be different than mine. It all depends on kind of where you drew your line and if it kind of goes a little bit in. Again, I've used this example in the past, and I've had students hit the 600, I've had students hit the 650. Usually it's in that range. Mine looks like it's about 610, 615. Okay, I'm going to say 615. So let's say that Ella would be able to drive 615 kilometers on a tank of gas or fuel, we could say. So she'd be able to run or drive 615 kilometers, not run. That'd be a long way to run. Sometimes we use that in the English language, right? Running would be, we can think of it as how far would something run or drive. So that's how we figure out, we can kind of, and that, again, that's extrapolating a graph. That's using the points that we have and kind of extrapolating for the end. The next one is kind of in between. It says, how much fuel is remaining when Ella has driven 500 kilometers? Well, with this here, we need to extrapolate. So we're going to take the 500 and we're going to figure out what is the y value when x equals 500. And draw it across, and that looks like about 10 kilometers. Or sorry, about 10 liters. So she would have approximately 10 liters of fuel left after driving 500 kilometers. Okay, so if she were to use this, and if this were to kind of continue on in a linear fashion or a straight line fashion, this is how we could find those points, either the end or somewhere in between. Now we could use that for any of these points here because any of them are valid, and she can drive any length of distance there.